I would like to talk about not thinking and how, in the right place and time, it can be a good thing. I really want to start out by talking about a personal experience of mine, of theater, which I've done since 5th grade and I'm absolutely in love with. In the moments before a play, I feel nervous and scared, and I am usually running through my lines frantically in my head, trying and running through the scene, just kind of panicking. And I can feel myself almost starting to close up and just forget it, and my mind is literally blocking itself from knowing what I've rehearsed for. And but what I really love about these moments is that nothing exists besides what's going to happen in a few moments and besides that nervousness. And this sort of anticipation is good for me, I think, because it blocks the thinking that's going on in my head. It blocks all the analytical thoughts that might have taken the nervousness place. Instead, I might be thinking about how I'm going to go out and play my character, and overthinking that and worrying about how I'm going to say things and how I'm going to hold my hands, for instance. But one thing I've learned about theater since 5th grade when I started doing it is that it's not analytical. It's about the relationships and the moments and the interactions between all the characters on stage. And when you're interacting with somebody in day-to-day life, you don't think too much about it. You don't worry about where your hands are placed or where your body is or how you say things. You are just there and you're just doing the interaction. And thinking too much can get in the way of being authentic. And the same thing happens on stage. And the audience will sense that it's not real, and they will sense your hesitancy, and they'll sense the nervousness that can come through when you're not prepared. But I think you can really compare that to any other extracurricular activity too. And like in sports, for example, in soccer. I don't think a really good soccer player thinks about how they're going to go kick a ball. They don't think about the angle of their foot or how they're going to run up to kick the ball. They just do it. They know how to do it. They've rehearsed how to do it. So they just go and they kick the ball. And I think that thinking too much about how to do it would actually mess them up. And all the best musical performance I've ever seen have been when the performers have been completely immersed in the notes that they're playing or the words that they're singing. For instance, you can tell when a guitar player is thinking, okay, now I put my fingers here to make this note, and then here to play this one. The best ones just kind of go out there and they do it, and they just get lost in what they're playing, and they don't have to think about it. I read a book called Chanteron by Gregory David Roberts, and he says in the book, there's a kind of luck that's not much more than being in the right place at the right time. A kind of inspiration that's not much more than doing the right thing in the right way. And both only really happen to you when you empty your heart of ambition, purpose, and plan. When you give yourself completely to the golden fate-filled moment. I think that's true, and I think a lot of people forget that. Because it seems like people like to plan everything out. And sometimes you can't do that. You have to just go with what happens. Like, no matter how many rehearsals you do before a play, something will always go wrong. You don't know what or how or when, but something always does go wrong, and you can't prepare for it. You just have to go with it, and you have to trust in your abilities, in your character, to improv it and to get it back on track, and to continue the experience that you're trying to create for the audience. And if you're thinking too much about your character, you won't be able to improv at all, you won't be able to do it authentically, and the audience will notice. And they will definitely remember that versus how amazing maybe you were before. But I also want to say that there's an element of thinking that comes in the practice and rehearsal of all these activities. we rehearse for hours and weeks for the plays, and sports teams practice consistently as well. And it doesn't mean that you're going to make things up as you go along. You have to know what's supposed to happen in order to work with each situation when it doesn't go as it's supposed to. You have to be prepared and know what comes next to work with what needs to be done now to get it back on track. And that sort of preparation comes from the rehearsals and the practice time and thinking about it analytically and thinking about the technical things. But by the time that you get to the performance and by the time that you get to playing in that game, you should know how to do it and you shouldn't have to think about it. You should just know. And that allows you to really enjoy the ride and focus on the perfect moment that you've worked hard for. Because now that you don't have to think about it, you can just kind of sit back and do what you were supposed to do. And that often makes you do it perfectly. And so, just remember to work for the things you love, and because that's the best way to go out there and be in the moment and enjoy what you thought and worked so hard for. And that ultimately will bring you satisfaction.